I'm going to make a remix of a song that I've previously mixed, and I'm going to use Logic and LANDR Studio in order to do so. And I'm going to discuss which parts of LANDR Studio and which parts of Logic Pro is best to use in different settings. Let's go. Big shout out to LANDR for sponsoring this video. All the opinions and comments in this video remain my own. There's basically two ways that I start off when I make a new beat. One way is to start off with a piano roll and a synth sound or just a piano sound like that and make my own melody. Something stock in Logic would be the easiest option right there and then. The other way I start beats, and I like to start beats using a sample. I'll browse the sample library and I find something that I vibe with. I chop it up and I rearrange it and make it my own in some way. Pitch it, maybe stretch it. In this case, I wanted to start off with samples. In Logic, we have a sound library, which you can download. You have an essential bundle, and then you have all the available sounds. And this comes with Logic when you have purchased Logic. So this is really neat. However, it's an old model. It's from back in the days when you had sample packs. Nowadays you have online sample libraries where you have all the sounds readily available and you can just download whatever you need and you don't need to store that much on your computer. In my case, I have around 100 gigabytes of available space. So if we go to LANDR, so you have it right in the DAW. Right here, you have access to all samples. And you can just pick a sample. It's as easy as just selecting a sound, like this one, for example, for the sake of it. And then I can just drag it from the plugin window and into the DAW like this. And then I have a new track right here. And from here, I can open a sampler, for example, the quick sampler in Logic Pro. Then I can start slicing it up, mess around with it. The value here is that you have millions of samples to choose from. In this day and age, I wouldn't be without a sample library like that, an online sample library that I can choose from without having to load up my hard drive with a lot of samples that I never use. And when we start playing around with the samples, there are basically two options. We have the quick sampler from Logic, which is stock in Logic. I really like that one. It gives me the MPC vibe. It's like I just slice up samples and I play around with it. And then you have the LANDR sampler, which it's a completely different beast, even though it has a lot of the same functionalities. The quick sampler, what I use this for is just to drag in audio from the session or from my hard drive. I'll just open a Finder window and I'll just drag in. Or I can, of course, use the stock sounds. I can find sounds right here, for example. Let's see here. For inspiration, I can use the LANDR sampler. I have a video about it right there. It loads samples from your hard drive. You just point to a folder in the settings of the sampler, and then it will search samples in your sample library, your personal sample library, that corresponds with the filters that you have typed in. So, for example, you want some snaps and claps. So you see here, 157 results found. So I have a lot of claps here. It's all my claps. So it's pretty neat. Now I have the beat right here and the vocals. So the first thing I wanted to do, I wanted to beef up the drums. Look at this. I've pulled up, this is a brand new plugin, Tone Empire, and it's called Real Light. It's a tape machine, and listen to this. So a bit more compact, a bit more beefy. And then comes the bass, and right here I selected another plugin from LANDR Studio, which is called the Valve Cult, and it's the Thermionic Culture Vulture. You can listen with or without. So you see that there's some more beef to it, so it's easier to listen to on phone speakers and such. So it's more audible like that.
prøver bare å se frem. Alle mine venner som har lost, du vet jeg ber for en. Finnes det noe sted vi kan bare.
Then we have the sample, and here is a plugin. This is a linear phase EQ. I could have used the channel EQ, but I like the linear phase. There was a harsh frequency here, and this is really surgical, this EQ right here. Here is actually something in Logic that LANDR Studio doesn't have. They don't have a surgical EQ, but I think they will add that in the future, if I'm not mistaken. Something that you cannot do when it comes to vocals and Logic Pro is that when you have vocals such as the rapper has recorded this in his bedroom and there's a comb filtering effect on it and it's almost impossible to get rid of. It's like it's just printed into the track. It's not recorded in a professional environment, but there are things that you can do about it with LANDR Studio. So you see here we have the LANDR Vocal Rehance tool, and you can just upload your audio file right there, have it enhance it or rehance it, and you get something better.
For det noen dager som jeg virkelig sliter, det de dagene jeg kjenner angsten virkelig biter. Ikke sånn at jeg bare klager og syter, jeg bare prøver å forklare hvordan tankene synker. Ned I hullet hvor jeg mister meg.
It's not a plugin, so it's not like a CPU hog. You do it in the LANDR application, in the LANDR client, and then you download the finished result onto your hard drive, and then you drag it into the session. So it's like you just drag it in as a clean audio file, and then you have a clean start, fresh start, without a lot of CPU holding you down. Again, I've used the linear phase EQ just to precisely cut down frequencies that I don't like. And then I've used the LANDR Vox chain to beef up the vocal a bit so you can listen with and without the Vox chain.
Finnes det noe sted vi kan bare være fred. Det oss mot alle andre samfunnsfiender nummer 1. La den første uten synd, kaste første sten. Jeg prøver alt jeg kan for å holde.
If you want to watch a deep dive into the Vox chain and all the other vocal plugins for LANDR, check out this video right there. I'll go deep into it. Logic has a great stock compressor, something that I actually use all the time. And what I like for vocals here is the Studio FET or the vintage FET. It depends on what character I want to have. I use that as the first compressor. And then as for the second compressor, I use the vintage Opto. And this is just to smooth things off afterwards. But I didn't use that right now, but I could easily have used this instead of the LANDR Vox chain. But what I wouldn't have then would be the distortion, but that I could have made, for example, with the Chroma Glow and also with the clip distortion or the overdrive. Another plugin that I really like in Logic is this one here, the Fat FX. This is a Logic plugin that I like very much. And then I just mute almost everything except this section right here, the distortion section. So we have bit crush, we have vari, drive, scream, tube, diode, soft saturation, etc. And you have 3 of them. So you can really stack the flavors on top of each other. And you have a mix knob right here, and you can also do hard clipping or soft limiting. I really like this one. This is one of my favorite plugins in Logic when it comes to distortion. I also love the Chroma Glow, but you know, with these AI features and everything, I don't know. I feel that I have more control with the Fat FX, and I've also used that a lot more because it's older, obviously. And finally, when a mix is done, you can master it, and I'll just show you here. We have the stock Logic mastering suite. It has just analyzed the track right here. It analyzes the track without listening to it. That's quite incredible, I think. LANDR has to listen to the audio, but this one just does it. And now I have matched it more or less, so you can hear the LANDR mastering plugin does this. So in the Logic, you have controls for dynamics, how loud it could be. There's an optional to excite, which is have some more harmonics added to it.
Der hvor alt bare fucka og vrengt. Er ikke så rart at jeg kan være betenkt, for her omkring så kan du ikke stole på noe andre enn deg.
And you have controls for the width.
Andre enn deg selv. De aller fleste sliter med spenn, så det er lett å bare falle ut og bli kriminell. Så jeg søker mer og prøver å finne sjel.
And you can fine tune the EQ as well. Like this.
Finne sjelefred, og glemme alt jeg okkuperer hodet med. Og tenker at det er alltid de som sliter mer. Det er sånn det alltid er.
And you also have a meter here for correlation.
Alltid har vært av min historie. Bare se frem.
And then you have a loudness compensation so that you can hit this and then you can bypass the plugin and you can hear the differences in character before and after mastering without the bump in volume that can trick you easily. Let's listen to this.
Alle mine venner som har lyst til vet jeg be for en finnes det noe sted vi kan bare være fred. Det er oss mot alle andre samfunnsfiende nummer 1. La den første uten synd kaste første sten. Jeg prøver alt jeg kan for å holde sti.
And then you can reanalyze if you want, and there are characters: transparent, punch, valve, clean. Let's go to the Mastering Pro plugin. Okay, you have 3 characters here: warm, balanced, and open. I like balance. I like to have that a lot. You have the loudness control, such as the one that you had in Logic. And then you have the equalizer, stereo field, how wide it should be, and more or less compression, saturation. This is sort of like the exciter in Logic. And then presence. This is sort of like the mid-range, I guess. De-esser, yeah. So you have some controls. You also have the gain match here. So let's listen with the gain match on.
Holde stien ren, så mange illusioner. Det er vanskelig å se, har gode intensjoner. Jeg håper at du vet, jeg håper at du vet, jeg håper at du vet.
It's a bit more open here. I can hear that it's not so hard compression going on in this plugin as in the one in Logic. This is a bit more dynamic, this one. So, but you can decide which one you like the most. I'll play them back once again, and I'll switch back and forth.
Men jeg finner alltid veien tilbake. Har vært en lang tur, tråkket opp med bratte bakker. For det er dager som jeg virkelig sliter. Det er de dagene jeg kjenner angsten virkelig biter. Det er ikke sånn at jeg bare klager og syter. Jeg bare prøver å forklare hvordan tankene synker. Det hullet hvor jeg mister meg selv. Ned i mørket der hvor alt er bare fucka og vrengt.
Now, when it all comes down to it, if you have Logic Pro and LANDR Studio subscription, there's really not much you need. For me, the only thing that I would need in addition would be the Pro Q 3 or the Pro Q 4. I really can't come up with any other plugin that I would miss if I had this scenario right here. What LANDR Studio has that Logic doesn't have is, first of all, the almost unlimited amounts of samples that you have access to without clogging up your hard drive. You have the vocal cleanup tool called Vocal Rehance or just Rehance. You have the mastering plugin, which is really powerful and flexible. And you also have included distribution, so you don't need to use TuneCore, CD Baby, DistroKid, etc. You can just have it all in LANDR Studio. So that's quite sweet. But what Logic has that LANDR hasn't is, first of all, really good surgical EQ, a more easygoing sampler that is just plug and play like the Quick Sampler, an all-in-one compressor that has many different characters and styles that is easy to use, and then you have the Chroma Glow. Combined with the fat effects, you have a lot of distortion and saturation choices right there inside Logic. But you also have the Tape Machine, the Thermionic Culture Vulture, and a bunch of other distortion plugins right there in LANDR Studio. So it's really, you're really spoiled for choice if you have both. Do you need both? Absolutely not. If you only have Logic, you have more than enough to go off with. If you have only LANDR Studio, you also have more than enough to go off with, because LANDR Studio also have DAWs included in the bundle. Now, if you want to try out LANDR Studio, use my link below, you get 20% off. If you enjoy videos like these, check out one of these videos. Hope I see you there. Peace out.